Thank you very much for those kind words of introduction. I'm reminded of a seminar in which Henry Kissinger was once introduced very kindly as well, but the speaker or the person who was doing the introduction said that, well, Henry Kissinger needs no introductions, to which he replied, well, perhaps not, but it sure is nice to listen to them. I'm here in the presence of course, editor-in-chief, CEO and others of Postimees, and I would just like to drop you a hint that I have two regular columns, which I, by the way, write myself. One is Blue Wings, and the other one is Dagens Industri in Sweden, but I don't have a column in Estonia yet. It's very nice to be here today, and I'm very smitten, taken by the fact that I've been invited here, almost as much as I was when Urmas invited me to speak to the Estonian ambassadors at the ambassadorial days. It's a great honor for someone like me to do that and to do this. And I want to begin my short introduction today by sending my best wishes to Mart Laar, who has been in many ways for me, for my party, and for a lot of people in my party, a frontrunner in Estonian internationalism, in Estonian Europeanism, and Estonian liberalism. And I do want to send him my sincerest wishes. And these wishes come also from my Prime Minister, who is in Brussels right now at the European Council, with whom Mart Laar has spent a lot of time, and also from our newly inaugurated President, Sauli Niinistö. What I wanted to do today was basically to give you three broad points on the three broad subjects that I've been given. The first one is Finland and Estonia. The second one is the European Union. And the third one is what I would call global trends. Having said these 3 points or set them out, I will try to give you three very modest conclusions on how to get out of the crisis or way out of the crisis. So first Estonia and Finland, second Europe, and then third the globe. My first general observation on Finland and Estonia is that I don't think we've ever been as close as we are right now. And I'm not saying this as some kind of a diplomatic nicety or because I've been hanging out with Urmas for the past 4 years or because I'm a great fan of Toomas Ilves. But there's a certain cultural, historical and political link which I don't see us having with any other peoples. Yes, of course, with Sweden to a certain extent because of our history. But with Estonia, it's on par, on similar. So when I stand as Finland and look left and right, east and west, or south and west, I feel a very close affinity. And I don't think you get these types of neighborly relations in many other places. We all feel a little bit special, we feel a little bit northern, we feel that we've had sometimes a rough ride in history, we feel we have a similar culture, and at the same time we feel quite good about ourselves right now, because by any measurement, if you look at the globe, Finland and Estonia and Sweden are doing extremely well. We had a wonderful experience actually with Urmas, to which he alluded to in Indonesia with the business delegation. Why did we go together? Just so we could hang out? Yeah, probably. but also because we feel that the economic area between Finland and Estonia is so close that the companies that we can get on these types of trade promotion trips will have benefit from all sides. On the economic side, we go hand in hand. In 2009, when the global recession really kicked in, your economy plummeted 14%, which is tremendous. Ours plummeted only 8%, which is tremendous as well. Why? Because both of our countries are completely dependent upon foreign trade. We, 40% of our GDP comes from foreign trade. You, 60 to 70% approximately. And those figures are pretty much in line with the plummeting of our economies. Now, how about growth then? Well, you guys are a northern star or light, 8.4% growth in 2011. You can imagine, I mean, growth, GDP growth, you can imagine from what it had plummeted to, you can imagine how other European countries feel. They look upon you with envy. Someone might ask the question, why has Estonia done so well after the crisis? We have tried to suss out a few reasons. One is you're very determined people. You've gone through a few really rough patches in history and hard times, and you know when you need to cut and be austere, you can do it and all together. And I'm not here making reference to poor Urmas, who was flying around the world in economy class and showing up at airports in the middle of the night, met by interesting honorary councils. But in general, the notion of sharing solidarity and difficult cuts is there. You're also a very business-friendly country. If Finland could only copy a part of the investment friendliness that you guys do, we would be doing much better. You might have seen a report by Jorma Eloranta on how to get Finnish business investments, and one of the key proposals was that we should have a similar taxation system for companies that Estonia has. It is very easy to establish yourself here. On top of that, you are an innovative peoples. You are the e-Europe that everyone is dreaming of, whether it's about voting or whether it's about doing your tax files on the internet. You're a trendsetter in that line. And as we all know, the digital economy is in many ways the future. And on top of that, of course, you are in the euro. And that gives you a certain shield, and that gives you a cutting edge. And that's why I think Estonia is doing so well. Finland and Estonia, as both previous speakers put out so well, are of course extremely close. The two figures that we can look at very easily is that there are 4,000 companies here in Estonia, and there are 40,000 Estonians living in Finland. I think that says quite a lot. Remember that in the early 1990s, we had less than 40,000 foreign nationals living in Finland. Now we have 40,000 Estonians and approximately 250,000 foreign nationals, by the way, including my wife, who is British and a good immigrant, I would say, and actually works for a law firm. So, you know, there you go. And I won't make product placement in which law firm, because I know that a good law firm has been promoting this seminar here today. The big question I want to pose you, and I'll just throw it out as a question right here now. Here I stand and say how close I feel and Finland feels to Estonia. I'll just throw this out, and perhaps someone can pose a question or throw it out me. Is Estonia a Baltic state or a Nordic state? Or is it both? I'll just throw that out at this stage, and I'd like to hear in the Q&A your views on that. I have my own views, but I want to hear you out on it first. So Finland, Estonia, very close. Also in Europe, we're seen pretty much as brother and sister, or sister and brother, or twins, or however you want to see us, because we are the northern Euro countries. We belong to the toughies, together with Germany, the Netherlands, perhaps to a certain extent Luxembourg, and then some non-Euro countries such as Sweden. The second thing I wanted to raise today is the EU, and I think the debate that we've had on the European Union in the past 3.5 years has actually been quite messy. But I'll try to simplify it by saying that we have three simultaneous challenges in Europe that we're trying to grapple with. The first one is the ongoing so-called crisis. And the crisis for me was first a financial crisis, then a debt crisis, and probably now a crisis of confidence. It has had different stages in the drama. It's been about Greek bailouts. It's been about helping out Ireland. It's been about helping out Portugal. It's been about creating a interim crisis mechanism system, and it's been about creating a long-term crisis mechanism system. But in this whole crisis, I want to make one thing clear. I think we have basically reached the top or turned the corner. I can't tell you exactly why I feel like that, because for me, economics as a political scientist is quite a lot about confidence and feeling. And right now there's a sense, whether it's the markets calming down or something else, that we have turned the corner, that we've taken the necessary measures. Does this mean that we're going to be without bumps in the near future? No, I don't think so. But let me tell you one thing that really, really, really frustrates me in the European debate, and especially in the debate in the northern countries, not least mine. It is the feeling that has been created among some Eurosceptics. In Finland, for instance, the true Finns, I'll say it out straight, that we're somehow shoveling money or euros into poorer badly behaved European southern countries. And I think that it's a huge misconception, and it frustrates me tremendously. Let me just give you, I know Helsingin Sanomat is among others here, and I think YLE as well from the Finnish. Let me just give you an example. Finland on 3 accounts. How much loans has Finland given so far? Exactly 1 billion euros, or 1 billion and 5. 1 billion euros. Second, how much interest rates have we gained on that loan? Exactly 40 million. And third, how many guarantees, or how much have we given in guarantees combined to the 3 countries plus the short-term and long-term mechanism? 8.75 billion euros. So if you take these 3 things together, 1, loans, which will mature in 10 years, 1 billion. 2, interest rate gains so far, 40 million. And then 3, guarantees, which remember are theoretical, 8.75 billion. But the picture that's been created in Finland is that basically we're using taxpayers' money, shoving it into Southern Europe and never getting it back. And I'll tell you one thing, I think that is absolutely irresponsible to give that picture. The euro is a much, much more serious currency than that. We're not giving loans, getting interest rates, or giving guarantees because we think it's fun. No, we're doing it because it is in the interest of 1, Finland, and 2, Europe as a whole. But the picture that's been created, in my mind, is wrong, and I think it's irresponsible of those people who do it. Sorry for getting, in a Finnish term, emotional about this. But at least I'm not using profanities or anything like that. So the crisis, a crisis of debt, but I think we've turned the corner. Second European challenge is rules. Why were we in this situation to start off with? We were in this situation because we had a monetary union without economic union. And you cannot have monetary union without economic union. Why were we in this situation? Because in 1992, when the Maastricht Treaty was agreed, member states at the time, or more specifically, finance ministries at the time, did not want to pool sovereignty in economic affairs. And now we have seen that the system doesn't work. If you don't have strict fiscal consolidation, if you don't have economic policy coordination, people, countries are not going to play by the rules. What do we need now? We need tougher rules. And we've done that on 2 accounts. One, and I hate to use jargon, but is a 6-pack piece of legislation which gives the Commission, the European Union, a hell of a lot more power to control national budgets than what it had before. And I think that is a good thing. Second, we have what has been called a fiscal compact or an economic union, albeit created outside of the European Union, among, at the end of the day, probably 25 member states, pending a little bit about how the Irish referendum on this particular question is going to be. So we're getting tougher rules, we're getting fiscal consolidation, and we're getting economic union, and I welcome that. So as a cause of the crisis, we get tougher rules and more integration. The paradox in all of this, and I come back to my emotional side, is that all of those people who are criticizing Greece, who are criticizing Portugal or Spain or Italy, are exactly the same people that refuse to have tighter controls because they understand that that means pooling sovereignty and closer integration. And I think once again, that is irresponsible. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. If you want to have a common currency, you need common rules, and those are the ones that we are creating. The third challenge that the European Union has is growth. And this is what Urmas was referring to as well. And on that account, of course, we need a stronger internal market. We are the liberalizers in it. We need a digital single market. And on top of that, we need to have more free trade around the world. We need to focus on the growth agenda. So what is coming out of Europe? I think we're seeing in the future more and more regional integration. And that's why it's very important for countries like Finland and Estonia to be hand in hand. Sweden, Germany, the Netherlands. You need to find similar friends. And the friends who right now form, in my mind, core Europe are the countries that are one, in the euro, and two, the countries that have taken care of their public finances, be they AAA countries or AA plus or AA minus. These are the countries that basically run the show right now. They have the moral right and the moral authority in many ways to be involved in negotiations. I would argue that Finland has never had more influence in the European Union than what it has right now. It's good news and bad news. Good news because we really have clout, and not only because we have a Finnish Commissioner for Economic and Monetary Affairs, not only because we have a Prime Minister who's been a foreign minister and knows his stuff, but because we've taken care of our public finances. The bad news, of course, is that we have this clout because some other countries have not taken care of their public finances. At the end of the day, and in an ideal world, I'd like to see all member states on the same boat in this. But let's focus on regional integration. The third observation I want to make today, first one was Finland, Estonia, second one was the EU, the third one is global trends and what's going on. Much like Urmas said, I think the center of gravity of world politics and world economics is moving eastbound, or at least towards emerging markets. Be it Brazil, where I was 2 weeks ago, Indonesia, where we were 4 weeks ago, China, Japan, South Africa, India, you name it. There is, however, and let me warn about this, a certain fallacy. People look only at growth of the emerging markets and draw the conclusion that these guys are going to be the big players. Do not forget that the European Union is the biggest economy in the world. 26 to 28% of the world economy is the European Union and its internal market. The United States is approximately 22, 23%, and China is 10%, Japan 9%, and then you move downwards. In terms of GDP per capita, we are still by far the richest area in the world together with the United States. And let's not forget that that is the case. But growth and the gravity is definitely eastbound. At the same time, in these global trends, there is an ongoing battle on values. Some of us, most of us, including Fukuyama, believed that the Cold War ended history and everyone would embrace two things, liberal democracy and a market economy. Of course, we've seen that the countries with right now the most growth potential are not countries with a liberal democracy combined with a market economy. China is an example. That is state capitalism. I'll give you one example. I think in the early 1990s, there were something like 3 or 4 Chinese companies in Fortune 500. Right now, there are over 40 Chinese companies in Fortune 500. And out of those, the bulk are state-owned companies. So, the notion of fight of values is very real. The truth is that the EU and the US are not the rule setters or trend setters in the way in which they were before. Partially because we've lost some credibility with our own financial crisis, but also partially because other players are emerging. So you have rules starting to be set in different places, such as, for instance, the G20. And we are definitely moving towards a G world. It's a little bit problematic for a country like Finland or a country like Estonia, because Finland would be somewhere around G34. It'll take quite a while for us to get back there. But if you put together the Nordic economies and the Baltic economies, we're G9. So, again, we have to think about creative ways of pulling resources. In these global trends, I would also argue that economics has become foreign policy. Before we only talked about the Cold War and we focused very much on different kinds of crises. But right now, the emerging markets are using the economy as foreign policy. Brazil feels confident. Indonesia feels confident. China feels confident because of the economic growth that they have. And this gives them political clout. Of course, there's still crisis. The Arab Spring is partially economics related, but it's also about real politics. But I would still argue that economics has become foreign policy. On the global trends, I'll finish my third point with this. There's been, for the past 20 years, a debate, partially a misconception, that companies are moving everything that they have to or towards cheap labor. Money goes where it's cheapest, right? So production moves to China. I think that trend is about to turn or has turned already. And I also think it's rather old-fashioned to look at export and import figures blindly. So exports, good. Imports, bad. Trade deficits, really bad. There's an element of that, but let's not take it black and white, because the truth is, as some bigger Estonian companies or Finnish companies here today know, that the value chain of a company is basically spread around the world among the 200 nation states that we have. So if you have, for instance, a Nokia phone, some of the design might have been made in Finland, some components in India, etc., etc. But the value chain is spread out, so it's very difficult to count it as a clear trade deal. So global trades, trends, center of gravity moving eastbound, and this means from our perspective, we need to be a bit more humble in Europe, the West, and the United States. We're not running the show anymore in the way in which we did it. And this brings me to my fourth and final point on how to get out of the crisis. Can I give you 3 responses to that before we go into Q&A? Response number 1, we need tougher rules in the Eurozone. Why? Because I like toughness? No. Because we need to restore confidence and credibility to the system. We do not trust each other anymore as Euro members, and the markets don't trust the things that we do. That's why we need austerity first. Austerity and rules first. Solution number 2, growth. Once we have these rules, once we have the confidence, we can start growing. And it is going to happen. It's going to be slow in the beginning, 1 to 2%, yes, and it might take a while, but it is going to happen. And we're not going to reach the figures of the emerging markets. But we need our internal market, we need our digital single market, and we need free trade. And third and final, and this is basically for smaller state, and Urmas, I'll come back to your speech in the Riigikogu, was it 21st or 20th of February. You began it with a quote from one of my idols, Lennart Meri, and the quote is, "In a changing world, the winner is the one who moves together with the world, yet at a slightly faster pace than the world." And I think this should be the red thread for us, for Finland and Estonia, in getting out of this crisis as well. We simply need to be at the core in the European Union, and then when we're looking outside the European Union, we need to be very quick, we need to be very flexible. This is what I wanted to say, first of all on Finland and Estonia, secondly on the 3 EU challenges, crisis, rules and growth, and finally on global trends and how we get out of this crisis. Tougher rules, growth and quickness. Aitäh.
Thank you for this fine and thought-provoking speech. Let now throw this question you had in the first part. Is Estonia a Nordic or a Baltic country? Back to the audience and listen what they have to say. Seega, kellel on häid, selgeid, lühidaid, emotsionaalseid vastuseid sellele, kas Eesti on Baltimaa või Põhjamaa? Palun andke märku. Seal vist küsimus, aga vastaks enne sellele küsimusele, mida esineja küsis.
But any question goes.
Okay.
I can't see anything from here, by the way. It's light is straight in the face. It looks very nice, you know. You all look like black dots and things.
Urmas, I can see. Üks moment, mikrofon tuuakse.
Kaido Pihlakas, vandeadvokaat, büroo HETA, Eesti Kaitseväe ohvitser, reservis kapten. Mul on selline küsimus seoses sellega, et me geograafiliselt asetseme Eesti-Soome sarnases geograafilises ruumis. Majandus on seetõttu seotud, me oleme ka julgeolekuliselt samas ruumis ja mõnevõrra ma olen kursis Soome seisukohtade julgeoleku küsimuse ja riigikaitse küsimustes. Ma tahan öelda, et Soome on meil andnud hindamatut abi Eesti Kaitseväe ülesehitamisel. Kuid täna kiirustades tulles konverentsile ja sidudes ette lipsu, ilmselt oli televiisor lahti, ma kuulsin niisugust üllatavat seisukohta. Ma loodan, et ma selles eksisin ja ma kuulsin valesti värskelt Soome presidendilt Niinistolt, kes ütles, et üheks esimesteks asjadest, millega ta tegelema hakkab, on Soome kaitseväe vähendamine. Olen kursis, et siiamaani on see seisukoht olnud vastupidine. Meil on olnud Soomes ja Eestis küllalt sarnased seisukohad. Ma loodan, et ma kuulsin valesti. See on igal juhul, kui see nii on, see Eestile väga halb uudis, sest lõuna suunas meil üldse peaaegu puudub igasugune julgeolek tagatis. Tänan.
Okay, yeah, no, I think it's a good question. I think Urmas was very diplomatic when he said that Estonia has integrated itself with Western institutions, and he didn't mention that Finland is not a NATO member, but Estonia is. What you're probably referring to, I mean, sometimes news cuts corners a little bit. We are in the process of making a broad restructuring of our defense forces. It's something that the defense forces themselves have recommended and suggested over actually the better part of the last 2 to 3 years. And they have put forward their proposal, which was presented by our defense minister, not by the former president, not by the new president, but by our defense minister a few days after the presidential elections. They're part and parcel of a broader restructuring, and in it, it is recommended and decided indeed that 5 barracks out of the approximately 30 in Finland will be closed for financial reasons. At the same time, we drop our reserves from about 350,000 to approximately 250,000 and do some restructuring on materials, defense materials. I'll give you one example. We have now signed a deal with the United States on land-to-air or air-to-land missiles called JASM, costing approximately 150 to 180 million euros. That was published yesterday. So this is part and parcel of modernizing, streamlining the Finnish defense forces, but this will in no way whatsoever weaken the Finnish notion of an independent and credible defense. So no major change on this. What the president wanted to say was that he supports the line that the defense ministry and the defense minister and the government has proposed.
Thank you. Ja palun mõtteid sellest, kas Eesti on Soome või vabandust, Põhja või Baltimaa või muid küsimusi? Selge.
Comment to the Estonian belonging either to the Baltics or Nordics. My opinion is that quite unfortunately in the Baltic eyes we are rather a Nordic country, especially now being a member of the Eurozone. And in the Nordic eyes we are definitely a Baltic country coming from the Soviet background. So in reality that kind of leaves us into quite a small and lonely place. That's a problem.
No.
Best of both worlds?
G7.
G7. Ja veel kord väga tänan, et meil on nüüd oli. võtame ühe küsimuse veel siis, jah.
European growth in the near future. I think the big cornerstones, the three that I mentioned, are very important. First of all, we need to liberalize the internal market even further. There are still forces in the European Union that want to legislate the internal market in such a fashion that it is not truly liberated. I firmly believe that the four fundamental principles of the internal market, free movement of goods, services, people and money, should be reinforced. There are still 3 countries that have not, for instance, implemented the Services Directive. I find this mind-boggling in this kind of a situation. Second, the digital single market. What happened in the 1990s with the telecoms market was that we went 10 years ahead of the United States because we harmonized the GSM standard, which then became the 3G, then 4G, and so on and so forth. But what's happening now in the digital single market, in other words, downloading applications and other things, is that we're falling 10 years behind the United States. And the reason for that is that there are a whole bunch of conservative civil servants who want to guard their own copyrights laws in the 27 member states. We basically have 27 separate digital single markets. And this is a tremendous impediment for IT-driven countries such as, for instance, Estonia and Finland. Some estimates from the Commission say that if we would have a single digital market, it would have the same effect that the single market launching in the early 1990s had. In other words, approximately growth 4% GDP for the whole area. And then the third one is, of course, free trade. We need to be the ones waving the free trade flag around the world. These are the big 3 institutional questions. On top of that, we just need to have a whole bunch of very active international Finnish and Estonian companies that travel the world and make deals. You cannot basically close shop and say, well, I'll just stick to my home market. You have to go where the market is, and right now the growth is in the emerging markets. These are my sort of very humble suggestions for growth.
No nii, suur tänu. Thank you.